Well, my friends, the episode we have all been waiting for is finally here. House of the Dragon has now delivered an episode that was unlike anything we have ever seen in Game of Thrones. In this video, let's go over what happened in one of the most shocking and heartbreaking moments from the Dance of the Dragons. Now, before we have the dragons dive headfirst into battle, let's start off by discussing exactly what happened in that opening scene. As we all know, this episode of House of the Dragon began in the Great Hall. Once again, we go inside the mind of Daemon Targaryen while he's having another nightmare featuring the younger version of Rhaenyra. We are able to see how Daemon is still haunted and affected by the fact that Viserys named his daughter as the heir for the Iron Throne. It's something that Daemon has not been able to stop thinking about ever since he was set aside for his niece. Although Daemon did bend the knee for Rhaenyra, it's hard for him to accept the fact that he wasn't able to follow Viserys on the Iron Throne. In the very first season of House of the Dragon, we saw Rhaenyra walk into the Great Hall as Daemon was already sitting on the Iron Throne as if it was his. Now we're seeing Daemon walk into the hall as Rhaenyra is sitting there in her father's seat. Daemon might have other men referring to him as Your Grace, but his nightmares remind him of where he actually stands. Then, in a fit of rage, he gets a form of vengeance by beheading Rhaenyra, in the same location he beheaded Vaemond Valerion. Daemon thought he saw blood all over his hand immediately after he woke up. Although it wasn't actually there, it symbolizes what happened the last time Daemon sought out vengeance for himself. He already has blood on his hands after Jaehaerys lost his head. It might also be foreshadowing Daemon's own downfall, but I will discuss that later. After he finally does get out of bed, he finds out Aegon's army is already marching and making their numbers much larger with each house they visit. It won't be long before they shift all their focus and forces onto Harrenhal. Daemon will have to raise an army right away, and unfortunately for him, he won't be getting help from House Tully as long as their lord is laying in bed on the verge of death. In the next scene, Daemon sits down with his grandson Oscar, who is the late and great ancestor of Lady Catelyn, Edmure, and the Blackfish. Now that Sir Criston Cole and his men are marching across Westeros, Daemon wants Oscar to murder his grandfather at once. He cannot afford to wait for some old man to die before he sends his soldiers out into the field. I guess Daemon forgot it's not always easy to get someone to murder their own family at the drop of a hat. I know if I was having the same nightmares and hallucinations as Daemon, I might start to look for a more honorable way of reaching my goal. It's obvious he is still led by his desire for vengeance. Anyone who gets in his way better fall in line fast, otherwise his dragon Caraxes will escort them to the old gods and the new. In the following scene, Rhaenys finally meets the man who saved her husband's life. It's unfortunate no one was there to save Rhaenys' life at the end of the episode. Now in Fire and Blood, it said Alan and Adam of Hall were essentially hidden from Rhaenys because she would not be happy knowing her husband fathered other children outside of their marriage. I believe the Sea Snake would not even bring them around until after Rhaenys died. Obviously, things were done a little differently in House of the Dragon. Not only did she accept him, but she also wanted to see him get honored for his efforts. Rhaenys wanted to see Lord Corlys raise him up as a legitimate member of House Valerion. We will see a lot more of Alan and Adam later this season. Rhaenys also revealed Baela has sent word from Dragonstone. So long as Rhaenyra was gone, members of her Black Council were trying to resolve issues on their own. As we saw in the other episodes, they were very anxious about sending her dragons into battle. They don't like the idea of sitting around and waiting for their enemy to hit them first. We all know where this is heading. They're right in regards to thinking they should gather an army and go on the offensive now. While they're sitting around and debating about what they should do, Sir Criston and his men are gaining momentum. Now, back in King's Landing, Alicent is having doubts about her son Aegon. As you all know, Alicent thought Viserys wanted their son to follow him on the Iron Throne after he mentioned Aegon's name during his final moments. Alicent thought Viserys actually changed his mind about the line of succession. She had no way of knowing Viserys only said the name Aegon because he was thinking about Aegon the Conqueror's dream of A Song of Ice and Fire. In his final moments, Viserys saw his daughter as the one who would unify the Seven Kingdoms against the darkness that lies out beyond the wall. Now that Rhaenyra informed Alicent about Aegon's dream, she's starting to have second thoughts about her son. Not only does she ask the Grand Maester if he knew how Viserys felt about Aegon, but now she's even looking for more information in their history books. She's on the lookout for any information about A Song of Ice and Fire. I like the fact that she's actually looking for answers. I can't help but wonder what Alicent will do if she finds out Rhaenyra is right. It's already starting to affect her relationship with Aegon. We also find out Alicent is worried about what might be growing inside her. She lies to the Grand Maester about who the Moon Tea was actually for. Alicent is now lying and withholding a lot of different secrets from those around her. That is, everyone except for Larys. I believe he knows about Alicent and Sir Criston's relationship. Now that he has eyes and ears all around that castle working for him, he most likely knows about everything that's happening within the Red Keep. It will be interesting to see if he ever holds that information against her. What will he do if he realizes Alicent now has doubts about Aegon's claim to the Iron Throne? Out on the road, Sir Criston and Gawain Hightower have been very busy. They've already marched on Rosby and Stokeworth and forced their levies to join theirs. And now we see him sack Duskendale. This is directly adapted from Fire and Blood. After beheading Lord Darkland, the rest of his men bent their knee in order to avoid the same fate. It's obvious Sir Criston is a man on a mission. They're eliminating Rhaenyra's alliances one by one, while also making their army much larger. As I said before, it won't be much longer before they set their sights on Harrenhal. However, first they must seize Rook's Rest. This is when we start to see Aemond and Sir Criston Cole's secret plan starting to bear fruit. If they're able to sack Rook's Rest, they will effectively cut off Dragonstone from the mainland. For now, it will leave Rhaenyra isolated on the island. Although Daemon might have Harrenhal, it's of no real value so long as he doesn't have a massive army garrisoned there with him. Now, during this scene, Aemond finally gets a bit of his own vengeance against Aegon. After Aegon embarrassed him in the brothel, Aemond does the same thing here, only now it's in front of the small council. Aegon soon realizes his army is marching in a different direction than he thought. He wants them to go to Harrenhal at once. Little does he know Aemond has already made the decision for them. Aegon has lost control of the situation. He seemingly has little influence over his own small council. Aegon's worst fear is becoming a reality. Once again, he looks very weak in front of everyone. This will have a major effect over what ultimately happens during the battle at Rook's Rest. Now, back at Harrenhal, it seems Daemon is finding it hard to sleep now that he's having these nightmares and hallucinations. It's like his mind has been infected and haunted by not only what he's already done, but by the events that are still to come. At first, we see Daemon begin to follow someone who looks exactly like Aemond. It's only when Daemon sees his own face that he suddenly realizes he's looking at himself. It's almost like Daemon was chasing his own ghost. As we all know, Daemon and Aemond are a lot alike in many ways. And with that being said, they're also each other's biggest enemy. Daemon wanted to fight him immediately, only he was worried Caraxes would not be able to face Vhagar alone. That's when Daemon ultimately decided to send Blood and Cheese after him first. After they murdered Jaehaerys, Aemond discovered they were actually looking for him when he saw the gold was missing from his own room. Now it seems like they are destined to meet each other again. Daemon is still haunted by the fact that an innocent child was murdered because he sought out his own vengeance against Aemond. These nightmares are basically sending Daemon a message. Alys Rivers said, he will die at Harrenhal. Now he sees his own face when he's looking at Aemond. His never-ending desire for vengeance might be his own downfall. So, in a sense, his fixation on Aemond has him chasing his own ghost. Daemon eventually stumbles on Alys Rivers, who seems to have an interest in the dark arts. Is she a witch, a maester, a figment of his imagination, or something else? Now it's interesting how she mentioned Harrenhal has been cursed since it laid its first stone. She also said the bed Daemon sleeps in was made from weirwood. This might explain why Daemon has been having these nightmares. If you have read A Song of Ice and Fire, then you will know Jaime also had nightmares like these after he fell asleep while his head was resting on a weirwood stump. As we saw in Game of Thrones, Bran was able to see certain events while he was inside the weirwood net as well. Not only moments in history either. Bran also saw fragments of events that would happen much later. All of the weirwood inside of Harrenhal seems to be affecting Daemon's mind. Alys has seen things as well. That's why she said Daemon would die. Now, after Daemon sips some of her drink, he suddenly finds himself seated at the table with Sir Willem Blackwood. We met him in the first season when he was much younger, asking for Rhaenyra's hand. While sitting there, Daemon also sees a vision of his late wife, Laena Velaryon. As we all know, Laena died after she had Vhagar set her afire. Later in the episode, Laena's mother Rhaenys will suffer a similar fate by the same dragon. Now, back in King's Landing, Aegon is bored out of his mind, and also bothered by the fact that he's sitting around looking weak, while other men are out fighting for him and getting all the glory. Alicent soon tells him that the men around him earned their respect, whereas Aegon was simply handed everything on a silver platter. Aegon ultimately decides he can no longer sit around and do nothing. He said he was as fearsome as any of them, and now he wants to show them exactly what he meant by that. Aegon thinks he's about that action, but he'll soon realize he wasn't ready. On Dragonstone, Rhaenyra tells Jace about Aegon's dream of A Song of Ice and Fire, and the threat from beyond the wall. Now that they're at war, she knows any one of them can die at any moment. If her son is to be her heir, he will need to know this information for when he's ready to ascend the throne. I'm hoping Jace will get another scene with Lord Cregan Stark. In Fire and Blood, it says Jace and Cregan made a pact of ice and fire bound by blood. If they do see each other again, I believe Jacaerys will inform Cregan about a Song of Ice and Fire. As we saw in the first episode, Lord Stark said there was death waiting for them beyond the wall. Now Jace might believe him, considering Aegon foresaw the same thing. We may see House Stark and House Targaryen make an agreement about fighting the White Walkers should they invade Westeros again. Right before we see the main event of this episode, we get a nice scene with Aegon, Rhaenys, and their dragons. Now, regardless of how you feel about either Aegon or Rhaenys, it was amazing to see the bond they share with their dragons. It makes the final moments even more heartbreaking when Meleys gave Rhaenys one last look before they fell from the sky. Well, the stage is now set for one of the most exciting and nerve-wracking moments in Game of Thrones history. Although we did sort of see a dragon battle during the Long Night episode, it was nothing like this. It was incredible watching Rhaenys and Meleys nearly defeat Vhagar and Sunfyre on their own. If only Rhaenys knew Aemon was hiding in the woods, maybe she would have fell on him first. One thing I immediately noticed was how much bigger Meleys was than Sunfyre. After Aegon yelled Jacaerys, Meleys absorbed the flames like a boss, then gutted Sunfyre's belly. It looked as if Sunfyre's blood melted some of the soldiers below. Now, Sunfyre was already badly hurt after that first strike, but Meleys fell on her again, locking onto its wing. It was obvious Aegon and Sunfyre were no match for the veteran duo. For a moment, Aegon thanked the gods when he saw Aemond and Vhagar over his shoulder. He knew Meleys was about to make easy work of his dragon Sunfyre, if it wasn't for Aemon hiding and waiting to catch them off guard. Now, because Sunfyre and Meleys were locked together, Aemon had to unleash Vhagar's fire on both of them. It's hard to say if Aemon had more than one reason for doing this. Did Aemon really think this was the only way to help Aegon? Or did he see this as a way to kill two birds with one stone? I think Vhagar could have fought Meleys off without using her fire. We do see her do this later in the episode. I don't think it was necessary for him to use the fire in that moment. Now, they say fire cannot kill a dragon, but it seems it can certainly hurt it significantly. Vhagar's fire did burn Sunfyre, and it sent the dragon spinning out of control until it eventually slammed into the ground. After Rhaenys and Meleys defeated Aegon and Sunfyre, they could have left and fought another day. They could have went back to Dragonstone and waited until they had more help before facing Aemon and Vhagar, but that wasn't in Rhaenys' nature. She wanted to end Aemon and Vhagar now. I think it was the most badass moment in this series thus far. Now Rhaenys went on the offensive, and we were able to see the massive size difference in their dragons. Once again, Vhagar was the much larger dragon. She is the oldest and largest living dragon in Westeros after all, a veteran of over 100 battles. And Rhaenys knew this better than anyone, and she still went after her knowing she will most likely lose. Vhagar locked onto Meleys' foot and unleashed her fire, but not before Meleys dragged her razor-sharp claws across her belly, forcing the old dragon to cry out in agony. Now, in a shocking turn of events, Meleys was able to break free in the last moment, sending Vhagar smashing into the ground. Once again, Rhaenys and her dragon could have left. While Vhagar was getting back on her feet, they could have fled back to Dragonstone. Rhaenys, however, wasn't done just yet. She flew back over the battlefield searching for her foe. As she flew over the castle, Vhagar suddenly emerged out of nowhere, grabbing Meleys around the neck. Unfortunately, this would be fatal. There was nothing Meleys or Rhaenys could do, and with one last look in each other's eyes, they accepted their fate, knowing they fought well. They fell from the sky, and the dragon basically exploded after slamming into the castle's outer wall. Vhagar has now ended the life of both mother and daughter, Laena Velaryon and Rhaenys Targaryen. It seems that Aemond and Vhagar are now the greatest force in Westeros. They almost seem unstoppable. After Ser Criston wakes up from his slumber, he sees Aemon sword in hand, walking over to Aegon and Sunfyre. Now, they wanted us to think Aemon was on his way to end Aegon's life, but he was already sheathing his sword before Criston shouted at him. Aemon then kneels down and grabs Aegon's Valyrian steel dagger. He looks at it for a moment, and I'm sure a lot of fans are wondering if Aemon was able to read the words written on the dagger's blade. As we all know, the blade was inscribed with Aegon the Conqueror's dream about a Song of Ice and Fire. However, we know the writing is only visible when the blade is red hot. Although Aemond is able to read in High Valyrian, I don't think he was able to see any of the writing on the dagger. Now, it may have been red hot after Vhagar's fire burned Aegon and Sunfire, but it doesn't look that way while it's in his hand. Maybe Aemond will figure it out at a later date. Now that Aegon is badly injured, he will be bedridden for the foreseeable future. Let's also remember, Alicent is researching any information she can find about Aegon the Conqueror. We might see her find something about the dagger and the words that are inscribed on the blade. It would be interesting to see how Alicent and even Aemond might react if they were able to find out what Aegon the Conqueror first saw in his dreams. How would this affect their strategy moving forward? Will Aemond see himself as the one who will unite the Seven Kingdoms? We will have to wait and see what Alicent does with that information, when and if she ever finds it. Now I must say that was one hell of an episode. Now Rhaenys, Meleys, Aegon, and Sunfire are out of the fight. Aemond will now sit in Aegon's seat while he's recovering from his injuries. Although Sunfire is hurt and Aegon looks nearly dead, they are still alive. Since Aemond and Ser Criston were already following their own lead, I'm sure it will be back to business in the following days. Make sure you watch my next video. I'll go over what happens in the 5th episode. I'm sure it will mostly focus on the aftermath from this battle. We'll see how everyone reacts to the news about Aegon, Rhaenys, and their fallen dragons. I will be making a lot of new videos every week. As always, I want to thank all of you for stopping by and watching this one. I hope all of you have a great day. I will see you again very soon. Bye.